Wow, what an incredible way to start our presentation. Hello and welcome to ITV's Living Room Legends, our virtual summit. I'm Myleene Klass, TV presenter and host, and today we are going to be taking a look back at the past 70 years of, well, iconic TV advertising. Now, earlier this week, ITV celebrated its 70th birthday, and as the UK's largest commercial broadcaster, this also marked a huge milestone for TV advertising, which was born in the UK 7 whole decades ago. Now, since then, UK advertising has built brands, grown businesses, shaped culture, and earned a place in people's hearts. Now, we have come together with System 1 and D&AD to create a landmark piece of research celebrating the very best of that legacy. Now, throughout the last 7 decades, our screens have played host to some of the boldest, funniest, most moving and, well, memorable commercial creativity ever made, from Beans Means Heinz to Gorilla to Vinny. So within the report, we have chosen 70 ads handpicked by our experts, reflecting the best of British TV advertising and its evolution over the decades. We've also been asking the questions that everybody wants to know. What is it exactly that makes advertising last? What makes it work? And what can the next era of creatives learn from the ones who got it right? So do stay tuned to hear what we've found out, because in a world that's chasing what's immediate, this is a reminder of the power of what endures. Now, just a little bit of housekeeping for you. The session is being recorded and it will be circulated on demand next week via our newsletter, along with the presentation slides. Throughout the webinar, you will find a QR code. It's just in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, where you can scan and submit any of your questions for the Q&A session that we're going to be hosting a little later on. Okay, now, without further ado, let us get stuck in. Let me introduce you to our Chief Innovation Officer, System 1 Group. This is Orlando Wood, and our Head of Creative Strategy at ITV, James Boodt. They're here to talk you through the key findings of the research. Over to you, gentlemen.
Myleene, thank you so much. Good morning. If you invite yourself into someone else's living room for 30 seconds, you have a duty. A duty not to bore or to insult by shouting. On the other hand, if you can show them something interesting, if you can make them smile, or if you can show them something enjoyable, then they may like you a bit more, and they may be more likely to buy your product. Those were the words of Martin Bowes of Bowes Massimi Pollitt, an agency that's represented a stunning 6 times in this report. Living Room Legends, as Myleene said, is a collection of 70 fantastic ads over the past 7 decades that we find outstanding in one of 3 areas, or 2, or sometimes all 3. Firstly, they're creatively excellent. We've got some brilliant recognition for some of these ads from the industry and their peers across the board. Secondly, they're loved by the public. Some of the lines and jingles have been recited and recalled for years onwards. And thirdly, underpinning everything, and most important to us, they're commercially successful, beyond all industry norms, and sometimes even beyond the wildest dreams of the client, and sometimes even the people that propose them in the first place. But from Living Room Legends to perhaps a boardroom legend. Orlando, if I could just bring you in for a second.
Well, thank you very much, James.
You were here at the start when we collated a long list of almost 200 ads, and you're here now that we've got our final 70. What was your overall impression when you first saw the report?
Well, look, I mean, the first thing that strikes you is just the evolution of TV advertising over the 7 decades. I mean, in the 1950s, the 1960s, things still feel a little bit culturally stiff and starchy. But then as things loosen up in the 60s and the creative revolution, things get altogether more interesting in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And we start to see advertising really find its groove.
It's incredible to think that the very first ad that appeared on ITV for SR Gives had a bar chart in it. We don't see enough of those in ads anymore, if you ask me.
Remarkable.
And Mars, that you can see there on the top left, has a massive pile of sugar in it, which we definitely won't see from October onwards.
No.
But thinking about the more recent ads, obviously it's been 10 years since we had such a retrospective, there are still great ads being made today.
Absolutely, yeah, fantastic. And, you know, you look at the breadth of ideas And you see there are so many different ways, so many different approaches to connect with your audience, whether it's charm, whether it's seduction, whether it's romantic interchange between characters, whether it's humor. There are so many ways to do it, and to leave your audience feeling surprised and delighted, which is really what advertising should do.
And what we should try and do maybe for the
Absolutely.
next 10 minutes
well,
or
let's
so.
do our best.
Well, we are trying. So one thing, it's not just us that think that these ads are great. These ads have been recognised across the industry, as I said, for their excellence. What's incredible is that half of the ads in this report, 35 of them, have won a D&AD pencil in some form, including 6 black pencils. To show the adoration of the public, we've tested all of these ads through System 1, and it's incredible to see that there are 25-star ads. And finally, effectiveness. We've had access to the IPA data bank, and 23 of these ads featured in this report have featured in effectiveness award-winning papers, including 4 Grand Prix. So an incredible breadth for excellent creativity, adoration from the public, and respect for their effectiveness. Also in this report are 7 timeless themes that you'll be able to explore, 4 of which explore those different nuances that get across the diversity of advertising that Orlando mentioned there at the start. But there are 3 foundational themes as well, which we'd love to explore for this webinar in particular. First up, unconventional ideas. This really is a remarkable achievement to celebrate the bold thinking that's required to get bold results. Who would have thought that a meerkat could sell car insurance, that a gorilla could sell chocolate, or topless men could sell Diet Coke? Orlando, you've spoken a lot in and Look Out, which you wrote, about the various different bits of inspiration that can contribute to advertising, and that's just grown bigger over the past 70 years.
Absolutely. I mean, an idea is absolutely central to advertising, having one. David Ogilvy said, if you don't have a big idea, your campaign will pass like a ship in the night. And the idea you have has to find the magic in the product. Bill Bernbach said, it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. And that's really what we mean when we talk about unconventional ideas.
And speaking of romancing the products, there were, of course, 70 ads that we could have picked to go through, but we're going to go into detail into one of them now. This is for John West Salmon. It was created by TBWA in 2000. So let's have a look at Bear.
At the river mouth, the bears catch only the tastiest, most tender salmon, which is exactly what we at John West want. John West endured the worst to bring you the best.
Can you think of another ad for pink salmon? I certainly can't. This is a really bold idea.
And what I like about it is, as with much great advertising, is the use of juxtaposition. I mean, juxtaposition is often how you find the magic in your product. So we start with the Attenborough-like voice. We believe we're in a documentary. And then suddenly we've slipped into something that feels a bit like a Beano comic magazine. And all of that to show the lengths that John West go to find the freshest, tastiest salmon. And that's really, kind of what unconventional ideas will look like.
And the great thing, you sort of spoke about length, but the longevity of this ad in itself, it was just a one-off 30-second spot. But when video sharing websites became a thing, this found a second life.
It did. About 5 years later, it was one of the first viral videos, wasn't it? And, it just shows the power of a strong, long-lasting idea.
And the power of humour as well. But that's not the only emotion that you can tap into, which leads us nicely onto our second theme, dramatic emotion. Plenty of ads within here, such as Sainsbury's and the fantastic story on the centenary of the First World War, to John Lewis's fabled Christmas adverts. Now, you've written a lot about emotion as well. Why is that such a powerful lever in advertising?
Well, emotion is so important because it orientates our attention. It puts things in memory for us, but it also creates a kind of instinctive preference, and that helps us to decide instinctively in favour of this brand over that one. But it also helps to strengthen price and therefore our margins. So emotion is absolutely key. And so how do you create emotion? Well, theatre. CDP, one of the brilliant agencies that are in our list
yes, 3 times.
Several times. They talked about 60-second theatre. And that's what you have to do. You have to put on something of a show to create that emotional response. And of course, broadcast television is very important in this, because to create an emotional response, you need audio-visual advertising is very important. But television also has scale, so you're speaking with an idea that can touch millions, and of course, it gives you time for your creative idea, for the magic to work. And that's, a very important thing about television.
Okay, well, time for our next selection. Again, as you spoke about, a moment of theatre, a dramatic story within itself. This is the very famous and very fabled Gold Blend couple that was created by McCann Erickson for Nescafé in 1987.
Hello. I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm having a dinner party and I've run out of coffee.
Come in.
Thank you.
Will Gold Blend be too good for your guests?
Oh, I think they could get used to it.
It's a very sophisticated coffee.
They have very sophisticated taste.
Do they?
Yes. Well, I must be getting back.
Now, golden roasted, richer, smoother, Nescafe Gold Blend.
Have you met your new neighbour yet? Oh, I've popped in for coffee.
Now, with a beautiful couple with a continuous smouldering tension that ran on for years and years. Orlando, I think you and I are best placed to talk about this.
You're
Nescafé.
quite right. You're
I think
quite
it's
right,
fantastic.
James. Yeah, no, I mean, talk about romancing the product. I mean,
literally.
That is what this is about. This campaign came about at a time when ground coffee, filter coffee were becoming more and more popular. And so what Nescafé did, McCann Erickson, was create this kind of scene between two people, a will they, won't they kind of relationship. And it conveyed glamour and it conveyed sophistication. And the way it was shot, the way it worked over a long period of years, it culminated in the final ad with declaring love for each other, essentially. 30 million viewers it got in that final ad because they promoted the ad before it aired. And so, it had a story arc within each ad, but across the whole campaign as well.
And that's important because some of these ads are brilliant encapsulations of culture. They're moments in time that are really articulated in 30 or 60 seconds. This one is a little bit more about another kind of sub-theme that we explore, which is imaginative repetition. The same couple keep coming back.
That's right. So it's a sort of fresh take on the situation each time. So consistency and freshness. And it's just beautifully shot and directed. And you'll notice how close up we are to the people's faces, the characters' faces. We're like over the shoulder of one character. We feel like we're in the action ourselves. And I think that was like a Caravaggio almost. And that was really at the heart of, I think, why this was so successful. The knowing glances, the flirtatious eye, all of that really, really worked well on the viewer.
It was definitely a good idea to move the cameras before or after as well, to be a little bit more facing forward. Now, the final theme is extraordinary craft. And in this one, we really wanted to celebrate the care that goes into advertising. The people that have either the grand vision or a fantastic attention to detail. Again, two things that you have spoken a lot about, the role of awe, the role of wonder,
Absolutely.
And how it draws a viewer in.
It does. Wonder is one of those wonderful things in advertising. And you get it through craft. And you can either do this on a large stage, like the Sony Bravia Balls ad, or you can, through little details, leave a trail of clues for the viewer so that they're piecing the thing together for themselves and putting it into memory. And it rewards them on repeat viewing too.
Now, again, there are plenty of ads that we could show that get across that grand scale, but we've chosen this time to think of one that takes care of the smaller details. Let's have a look at the final ad that we'll show as part of this introductory piece. This is R. It is by Mother and it's for PG Tips.
Ta-da!
Mm.
嗯。
Mm.
嗯。 Mm. 嗯。 Mm. 嗯。 Mm. 嗯。 Mm. 嗯。 Mm. 嗯。 Mm. 嗯。 Mm. 嗯。 Mm. 嗯。 Mm. 嗯。 Mm. 嗯。 Mm. 嗯。 Mm. 嗯。 Mm. 嗯。 Mm. 嗯。 Mm. 嗯。 Mm.
Fantastic ad there with Monkey and Johnny Vegas as Al. This is a brilliant example of all the little things. We could spend a whole webinar just unpicking this one.
We probably could. I mean, there's so many wonderful things to enjoy in this ad. I love the way that they both enter the house. And it does something that I talk about. It's sort of got repetition in space and time, which we find very funny. So the way they both come in at the same time and go, blah, 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 we find that funny, you know. Repetition in space and time. I also love the transition that we go through from the cold blues through to the warm reds and oranges, you know, telling through the implicit. And the implicit's so important in advertising, so powerful, telling the story of the product. And then the other thing I really love about this ad is the way that it doesn't use any words. So it conveys through the body, through the voice, through the actions of the characters, what's going on. There's this wonderful thing in theatre, in the origins of theatre, the commedia dell'arte. And they wore masks and they couldn't convey emotion through their faces, so they had to do it through their voices and through their bodies. And they had this language called Grumelot. And Grumelot was a bit like Mr. Bean, you know, so it was sort of...
Someone will clip that.
Exactly. And that's exactly what was going on in that ad. And so you see this sort of series of noises, and then at the end, that makes the final bit with the... like an exclamation mark on everything that's gone before, and gives it added emphasis at the end. So I really think that's so important in evoking emotion and conveying emotion is the body and the voice.
Two things that I just want to pick out. Firstly, across all three of them that we've seen, they are just as enjoyable at their second or third or 10th viewing as they are at their first. And secondly, with this one, what's really exciting is that Monkey's back. Back on our screens.
Fantastic. A fluent device, as I would call it, a repeatedly used character that's so helpful, actually helpful in driving share gain, but also helpful in reducing price sensitivity as well, which is another benefit of it.
Fantastic. So those are the three main themes that underpin all the advertising that is in Living Room Legends. There are also 4 sub-themes, some of which we've spoken about in brief detail, things like capturing a moment in time, the entertainment value, romancing the product, and imaginative repetition. But ultimately, that's for you to pick apart and learn from yourself. Now, you may have noticed that we've decided to call this report the first 70 years of TV ad excellence. And that's because we're really passionate, not just about the history that this great country has when it comes to creating advertising, but also of our future as well. I'm sure we'll be back here in 10 years' time with another 10 ads to be able to speak about. So I think it will be really exciting indeed. So please, download the reports. We'd love to come along for a watch-along or a discussion around it as we continue to talk about this paper. But most importantly, I think the best thing that you can do is take the lessons from this and in your briefing, in your next creative review, in your next discussion about that ad, make sure that it could be a candidate for a Living Room Legend. All right, back to you, Myleene.
Honestly, a bit of live theatre there for us. I enjoyed that. Sorry. Thank you, Orlando. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
60-second theatre, instinctive preferences, a real masterclass there. Amazing just to hear what goes into some of the craft there behind a great ad. Just a quick reminder for you, do please keep sending in your questions. We will be having a look at those. All you need to do is scan the QR code. It appears in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. So remember, scan and submit your questions. Okay, right. Now it is time to bring in our panel. Joining me to discuss the research in just a little bit more detail, I am absolutely delighted. I've heard them already having quite exciting discussions backstage, as it were. So let's bring that to the forefront. I am delighted to welcome an amazing panel of people, all experts across the world of advertising, from creativity to strategy to media. Let me introduce you to Art Director at High Snobiety, Lücy Aa, Founder and CCO at Ace of Hearts, Richard Brim, Chief Strategy Officer at The Gate, Kit Altin, and Strategist at WPP Media, David Wilding. Greetings.
Hello.
Hello. Lovely to see you all. Thank you so much for your time today. I've already heard you guys having a good old chat. I kept saying, stop. Bring this to the forefront, because this is exactly what we want to talk about, the very changing, ever-changing face of ads. Right, we've just seen, I suppose, condensed there, 70 years worth of what can be described as the best ads. But how does a person or a team go about putting together such a great work? Kit, you're the strategist here. How do you even begin putting together something like that?
Yeah, the pressure. So I guess just to kind of take you a little bit behind the scenes of how it all works. Part of the truth is it's kind of complete chaos.
Okay, so, well, that's reassuring.
Yeah. So we love to pretend, when we write our case studies, that everything's very kind of neat and linear and kind of it all follows a nice straight line. Sometimes that happens, but it's pretty rare. So like as a strategist at the beginning, really all you can do is kind of immerse yourself fully in the world of your brand and your customers and the business. And eventually something is going to kind of, bubble to the surface that's kind of interesting. And I think the other truth is that sometimes there's a really straight line through from the strategy, and kind of great ideas are kind of born there, and you can see it all the way through to the creator. But other times it's kind of pretty wobbly. And the kind of creative will go off on kind of a really interesting journey, and that's kind of all part of the magic of it. But I think something that I've always found works really well at the strategy stage is you're trying to find something with like a bit of grit and a bit of tension, something a little bit kind of surprising. That for me always seems to translate through better, because if you can set up a tension that the creatives can resolve, then that gets really interesting. So like Guinness is a really good example. Let's make waiting into a good thing. Good thing comes to those who wait, So yeah, some kind of like grit or tension at the beginning almost always leads to better work later.
Well, we see that history is written by the winners, so we've seen the best ads there, but there must be a lot of sort of roadkill along the way, sad to say. So what do you think is the special...
good panel, wouldn't it?
Yeah. But David, what do you think is the special ingredient? How do you get the longevity from these ads? What makes them so memorable? What is it that we adhere to?
Well, I think obviously the research has talked about the 7 kind of core themes, but I think fundamentally we're offering something to people that they like, enjoy and respond to. And I think TV is so good for that. I think we're at a time now, a big birthday for ITV, and birthdays
happy 70th.
And birthdays are a time, I think, for appreciation. And I think we are just very lucky, and I haven't been asked to say this, we're really lucky to have ITV in this country. It gives us not only a shared sense of what's true in the world, which is incredibly important at times like this, but also just gives us that cultural connection, right? And the fact that we all have something in common, from the fact that we have ITV in common. I think genuinely we probably underappreciate that because we've had it for 70 years, but we should definitely celebrate that. And obviously from a television advertising perspective, we've kind of stumbled upon 70 years ago a format that works really, really well for advertising, which is audio-visual. The clue's in the name, it's not audio or visual, it's both together. Delivered in the main room mostly, and obviously that's changing with certain people's habits and behaviours, and particularly younger people. But with advertising as part of the kind of value exchange for people. So it just feels fair. Not all video is equal. It seems that sometimes if I'm by the side of the road and I've got a puncture and I want to look up a video of how to change my tyre, and an ad turns up, that's not very helpful to me in that environment. Whereas I think what we've got with TV is just a really good value exchange, in that, in return for great content, I will also sit through and also enjoy, as we saw from that fantastic reel, the advertising as part of it. And we don't appreciate it because we've always had it, but it is a kind of like a magical thing around that value exchange, which advertisers really benefit from.
It's quite interesting you say that, because it's almost something we take for granted, that you are invited into people's sitting rooms.
Totally, yeah. And I think that thing about, if we invented TV advertising last week, we would be going, I've got this thing.
And made fire.
And look at it. And people sit and they watch it, and they watch it together. And there's a big screen, not a small one. And, they'll talk about it, and you go, that sounds a bit too good to be true. But we have it sort of every day. And so I think we should, during ITV's birthday, just really appreciate that.
Also interesting how Orlando pointed out, it gives us an internalised preference that I hadn't really considered.
Yeah.
It's all about trust along the way. Lücy, you were on the panel. of helping put together the top 70. I mean, so you must have seen a lot.
Yeah.
Firstly, how did you choose? How did you decide?
It was very difficult. It was an amazing experience. I mean, we had System 1 and ITV brought us like a massive long list. Obviously, D&AD, there was like a few, going through all the annuals and stuff. But like even from the wide list, it was difficult to kind of narrow down because I think some of us also brought like our own ads that was, maybe missing. And we was like, what about this? Why is this on there? And it was like an amazing experience. Like there was definitely some that we had to kind of cut. Like I remember in particular, there was the Guardian ad, Three Little Pigs, done by BBH. And that was one that was kind of raised and it was like, this is amazing. We should talk about this. And the only reason why we kind of didn't, we took it down because there was another previous Guardian ad, the different points of view, which came from the same kind of strategy, obviously executed differently, but this was the kind of decision-making process of how we came to the 70 ads. There was so many things to kind of consider. It's like, is it a different strategy? Is the creative, how far does it kind of change the ad in itself? But it was amazing, experience all together. There's some ads I'd never seen before, like the Schweppes ad.
Iconic for a certain vintage of viewer.
Love that so much. But yeah, it was a pleasure because I'm a nerd for old ads in particular, from 1960s right up to early 2000s.
Well, you're embarking on a new generation of creatives and what you're putting out into the market. What does it feel like, I suppose, to be standing on the shoulders of giants? What does it feel like to be looking at these ads and being able to essentially judge them and then move forward with them?
Yeah, it feels...
No pressure.
Quite overwhelming.
We expect great things from you, Lücy.
No, it's amazing to see because I think what, being, new in the industry and everything, what I kind of take is just the lessons that I can kind of learn from these ads. It was the same on D&AD's shift program and the barn program that I did at BBH. It was all taking little nuggets from all these ads that we can kind of learn, the insight. How do we kind of get to this and bringing it into the work that I'm kind of doing now, the pillars of what makes a great ad is always going to remain the same throughout. It's just how do we kind of adapt it to these new mediums that we're coming across.
Well,
really.
Very interesting point actually that you raised there, Lücy. Richard, the pillars of what makes a good brand. It's always obvious afterwards, but how do you make something either radical or how do you get something to stick or to cut through? What's the solution there?
I think it's very important what you said before about we're inviting to people's living rooms, especially with the work we've just seen. And one of the most expensive mistakes brands can make is being boring. And I think if you think that we've got 70 ads here, but if you think of all the ads that have gone out over the last 70 years and the ones you can remember, they're these. And I think it's imperative. The first thing you have to do is be interesting. And I know that sounds obvious, but it's not necessarily the practice that everybody's putting out there. I think fear comes in sometimes. We can't do that. We can't say this. We can't. We've got to put too many messages in there.
So how do you combat that? Because then when you have the creatives who meet the corporates, how do you then keep it interesting but also adhere to the T's and C's?
Yeah, it's very difficult. It's very difficult, which is why there's 70. I mean, as I said, there's more than 70, but it's very difficult, and I think you have to have trust, and I think you have to have a great team behind you. I think some of the work that I'm most proud of, the role of the agency, the director, the production people, the client, you couldn't put a paper between it because we all had the same goal, we all had the same sort of taste, and if we didn't, we respected each other, and we had I've had standing up rows with clients, but it's all about the work. It's all about what the best thing is for and that little thing, and it is the little details that will lift it from good to great to excellent to 70. There's one of these 70 ads, and you can. There's a thing like death by 1,000 cuts. It's a real thing,
I feel like you're a man who's felt each of those
Been to
cuts.
war.
You've been through.
I think that you just have to put yourself in the perspective of the person watching at home. And I think there's a story, it might be apocryphal, of when the people behind the gorilla ad showed the ad to the client at Cadbury. Apparently, I don't know if this is true, I heard it, I hope it's true. And they gave the video of the ad to the client and said, can you watch it at home, please, at the weekend with your family? Because that was the context in which that ad would be seen in the world, in people's living rooms. So in a kind of corporate boardroom, and you're seeing a drumming gorilla, you're kind of going,
I would have paid to see that.
but at home, it's extremely funny. And
Well, you're right, because if you're sitting at home with your kids, I already know a drumming gorilla, my son would have absolutely loved that. But you are right, you are showing it to corporate.
Yeah.
That's hard to buy as a company, where your main mission is to sell chocolate. We're going to have a drumming gorilla on a purple background. Well, where's the product? Oh, it's the purple background.
Yeah.
But we've not got an eating shot. No. We've not got a milk pouring and ingredients being mixed together. No. It's just a drumming gorilla with Phil Collins.
These are like the conversations I have. It's like, how did that get sold?
It's trust. It's trust, and it's being together as a tight team. It really is.
So how do you break the mould of that? What's the overriding emotion that you try to convey? David, you think of gasps and whoops and sounds and laughter and crying, but what's the overriding emotion that will sell it through to the customer?
I mean, it's almost like, what's your favourite emotion, isn't it? I think you see the light and shade, and you saw, the John Lewis ad, and the long wait, and the boy, and it's beautiful and crying. I do like the funny stuff. We were sat just off camera watching the reel at the beginning, and I've not thought about the AA ad for years. He's a nice man. He's a very nice.
He's a very nice man.
Very nice man. And that was just. We were all just laughing at it then, and actually you laughed at the time, and that in a way was kind of like the equivalent at the time to like nothing beats a Jet2 holiday this summer. It is a thing that everyone was like, it's cultural currency, if you like. And I think it's the power of making people laugh, which you can do in TV advertising in a way that you can obviously do in other media as well. But TV advertising can lend itself to it. And you kind of go, when did we get so serious? I know there's a lot of serious stuff happening, but the people are capable of caring deeply about serious stuff and also wanting to enjoy levity and lightheartedness. And quite often I work with a couple of brands where I've said to them, does this brand have a sense of humour? It sounds quite passive aggressive, it's not meant to be, but actually when you actually understand what that sense of humour is, then you can kind of go, we can maybe leverage that in potentially in different channels, different ways of talking, and it just all can feel a little bit serious sometimes.
You are right. They do say that you trust the people more that you laugh with. Kit, how would you say, because you've had like an overview of the breadth of adverts over the years, how would you say it has changed? David has pointed out things have got very serious, quite rightly, but how would you say that, in your view, these ads are coming across now, so how they did before?
Yeah, they probably have got a bit too serious, and marketing's had quite a long and not massively helpful obsession with purpose, which we won't get into right now. But I think they've become too rational. So to this point, right, about like the stuff that this list of 70, Rick's exactly right, really hard to sell. And I really feel, right, for there's going to be lots of CMOs and brand leaders watching this, and they've got to walk into a boardroom of people who are not particularly interested in creative work generally, and they're the people who've got to say, can you give me some money, please, to go and spend it on a drumming gorilla or a puppet monkey or whatever it might be. And that is a really hard job, because these people see that money as just spend and it's gone. They don't see it as an investment. And so the way that lots of people got around that is we've kind of put all this scaffolding around the creative work, right, and around the creativity. And people like me, usually that's our job to kind of do that as well. So you end up with these long PowerPoint decks and lists of rational benefits that have all got to be ticked off, and then rounds and rounds of research, because that kind of makes everyone feel a bit more comfortable.
But
about
as David
magic.
pointed out, if there's no humour, then it lacks. But then if you deconstruct a joke,
yeah, exactly. If you've got to explain
that's
it,
when you start,
so that's kind of
we're in trouble.
That's sort of the problem. So I think we've just, because lots of people are uncomfortable with the kind of lightning in a bottle nature of the creativity, we put all the stuff around it, but that started to make the advertising kind of more rational and more boring as well. So I think somehow the scaffolding's kind of become the building, and we need to kind of get back to, you know, and that's why reports like this are so powerful, right? Because it's not just us going, wow, here are 70 amazing ads, but they've been cross-referenced with like the effectiveness data to show, and what we all know, which is that like great creativity and great entertainment is what works.
I was just going to say, like, is it a case of, like, with some of these ads, have we also just not, like, post-rationalised why they work? Like, in the beginning, were they just, well, this is fun, this is just
This
funny.
is what I mean about
and
the
then you
chaos,
just go,
yeah.
And then you post-rationalise why, oh, well, yeah, this worked because X, Y, Z, this is, you know, how it came to be.
Money is tight now, budgets are tight, econometrics are clear. So beforehand, you'd know that half, you know, 50% of your marketing spend worked, but we didn't necessarily have the breakdown as to how, where and why, but we have it now. So is that getting in the way, Richard? Because you're nodding profusely
I mean,
with what Kit
I
and
have
David and Lücy are saying.
I have a massive point of view on this. I think creativity is one of the most important, one of the most powerful business tools there is. If you talk to new founders, they talk about creativity being their main attribute when they're founding businesses. And I think what's happened as a business is we've overthought everything, and because of the fear and because budgets are getting tighter, there's less left to chance, and there's less left to that sort of serendipity of that thing that just I don't know why, but I like that. And as an industry, I think we've become a bit more like glorified colouring in. So we make things that look like adverts, but that don't necessarily have the soul of some of the older work there. I think there's some brilliant stuff being done at the moment, but I think we have to get back to that sort of believing in the sort of the serendipity of stuff. I don't know why, but I just like it. Yeah. It's okay that's that. If you feel something in your gut, if you feel something, that's way more beneficial than having something physically saying this is how this is done. If you feel something, that is one of the most powerful things, and I think you can only get that by being truly creative.
I, as a creative, agree, but also on the other side of it, know how difficult it is to then go to the finance department and say, have you lost your sense of humour? Because they're the ones who have to give the old rubber stamp.
Yeah.
So, David, how do you get around something
Well,
like
I would say if you do have a finance department without a sense of humour, you can do the rational route when it comes to explaining the case for TV, and you know, actually it's the most effective medium, been proven, you know, in case study over time. But for the reasons that I mentioned earlier, you know, it just happens to be a really powerful advertising medium. So you can do it that way, and actually there is also research that shows if you're just average, and I know we're not interested in average today, right? We're interested in the best, but actually if you've just got average work, then actually the kind of the floor and the ceiling on TV are a lot tighter. So actually you can put out average work. Obviously no one's average, no one's got an average child. You can do that and it will be very, very effective. But as we've been talking about today, the benefits that come from, you know, just, you know, leaning into the creativity, the humanness, the viewer watching at home are so huge, and that's why I think this is so important, because actually we've got a whole bunch of lessons here that we can, as James said, take forward to the next 70 years. And of course the media landscape is evolving in all kinds of exciting ways, but these principles are enduring, and that's what makes it so helpful to have a reminder of them. Yeah, I've worked in this industry for quite a long time, and I'm sitting there going, oh yeah, of course, you know, make it entertaining, think about all this kind of stuff. So having this regular reminder, whether you're starting out or whether you've been in it for a little while, it's just so helpful.
Well, let's come to a new generation here, because you're looking at enduring ads. How do you move forward with these? Because no ad is really filmed in isolation. You've got campaigns then behind them that a lot of people have to then get on board with. And if the ad doesn't necessarily work, well, then the whole campaign can often fold. Yeah. What would you look, as somebody coming into this now, how would you approach it?
Yeah, it's interesting, because I was actually trying to just remember who actually started this, but it was Steve Harrison and Dave Dye wrote a book about this advertiser back in the day. I completely cannot remember his name, but his approach was like, he put out an ad, see how it did, and then start the campaign off the back of that ad, because you couldn't, like, he couldn't predict, like, we're doing all this prediction that, yeah, so this campaign's going to work, we're going to start with this, we're going to go into, you know, out of home, and it's going to be this. And yeah, I think you run into that trouble of, well, if the first one doesn't work, then the rest kind of just falls apart. And his thing was, let's see what works, and then we build a campaign from that, because in, you know, at least the way that I was taught is all the ideas, you had to have a big idea anyway. So really and truly, the campaign can be built off the back of that first ad that you do. Just see whether it works. And I don't know, I was also just kind of taught to, it's this thing of, I think with creatives, you have to come up with so many ideas around all these kind of briefs anyway, just to kind of also exercise the muscle, but just see whether this idea has breadth and room to kind of breathe in general. So,
but we live in a time now that wants instant results and can read those instant results. So how do we get around that? Because I dared to ask the question, and then you guys all went off in separate directions. And I'm going to ask the question again now because I actually told you to stop because I wanted to hear this as a panel. Attention spans. Yeah, so are the attention spans shorter, or do they want the gratification quicker, or is it a bit of both? And we can see the immediate sales from our ads. How are you now refilming? Because you know, Orlando and James talked about 60-second theatre. I don't know if anybody I know will sit through 60 seconds of theatre in the same conventional way now.
I think to Lucy's point, there's. If you look at some of the greatest campaigns of all time that are featured here, so Levi's or John Lewis, they all started off with one execution that caught fire. And what they did is they created a sort of appointment viewing. And when the new Levi's ad was out, you watched it. You found out when it was and you watched it. On the 7th of November, people would watch the John Lewis ad. And I think, we were talking about it, and I'll let Kit talk about the attention spans bit. I think if it's good, and you're giving people something that they want to continue watching, it goes back to this boring thing. You've got to keep on innovating and thinking how to do things differently. And a 60-second TV ad is not always going to cut it, but it can. And we've got research that shows that, but. I'll let you because I don't want to use your words.
But I mean, I agree. So I think, you know, we and marketers tend to get our knickers in a bit of a twist about the attention span thing, right? And I don't think we need to, right? We live in a world where it's really hard to see a film that's under 2 hours. A lot of them are running at 3 these days. People will binge watch Netflix for, there were 8 episodes of something, you know, all night. Bed rotting is a thing. People's appetite for content is absolutely infinite these days. And, you know, and it doesn't just have to be short content either. Like, they're really, if it's good, they'll watch it. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's kind of, it sounds really obvious. I think Richard Osman might have said this on a panel as well recently, but if it's good, they'll watch it. And it's true. So I think, you know, a little bit less, I think, of the, oh my God, we need a 6-second cut down, which strikes just horror into every creative's heart. And a little bit more like, what's the best way to tell the story, I think, and would give us some of our confidence back, you know, I think, as an industry.
I think people have got short, boring spans, definitely. Yeah. But then our job is to create work that isn't boring and think about the right context. Sometimes that's, you know, a long thing, sometimes it's a lot shorter. It kind of depends, again, it comes back to the idea. But
how do you go about that, David? Because you've got now different platforms saying, well, the sweet spot is 3 seconds in, and if you haven't got them, then you've lost them. How do you build that story?
You kind of have to filter out some of that and kind of go, is this research or is it a sales pitch? But also, I think there's a thing about actually, you've got to put yourself from a consumer, you're looking for the sweet spot between what people, your brand and media, right? So you imagine that as a Venn diagram, or a Zen one. Yeah, it is. I'm quite clear. And you're aiming right for the middle of it, right? It's got to be good for people. You got to think about who's your audience and what do they want. It's got to be people to know it's come from your brand, which doesn't mean stamping your brand on it, but it comes back to imaginative repetition. It feels like it's come from this brand. There's that sense of whatever. And you've got to understand the media landscape and all the, you know, what works in each media, and that's really the job of the media planner, which is what I think makes media planning quite an interesting role all the time, but particularly right now. And actually that's the sweet spot you're aiming for. And at the same time, I think a bigger challenge is the attention span of the marketer or the client or the financial director who's concerned about this quarter. And, you know,
understandably,
absolutely. But if we're not careful, we end up, you know, doing incredibly short-term things and missing the bigger picture.
I have a thing on this though, because like with the attention span, like there's that age-old quote, you know, people read what interest. It's about reading, but it's still contains an ad, but people read what interests them, and sometimes that's an ad.
Yeah.
Like it goes for content and everything in general, but like on the 6-second thing, like oh, I have such an issue because they're like, yeah, it's gone down to like 5-6 seconds or whatever of attention span, but people are kind of off of like seeing an ad anyway, and clients will want to throw in, well, because it's 6-second attention span, you want to get that logo in the first 3 seconds. So now the attention span is going to go down to 3 seconds because
well, the minute you
see the logo, it's just
they
turn it off. So like it's always annoying. You go back to that thing where it's like, no, if it's entertaining, people watch a whole 2 minutes of an ad, and then you can show the logo at the end or even halfway through because you've already kind of caught them in those first few moments.
Yeah.
The best work goes, it's not about where you say it or how you say it, it's about what you say. And I think so many times we can get caught up in the where and how you say it as opposed to actually what you're saying. And I think that's really important. If you look at all these ads, they say they have a very, very simple message, clearly delivered in a really entertaining way, and it used to be better because it was just one medium, and now it's like that. So as a creative, you've got loads more toys to play with. At its most exciting, at its most confusing, you've got loads of things to touch, but it's got to be about what you say. It's got to get about as opposed to how you say it or where you say it.
So do you find it interesting now that so many are going back to a retro feel? Have we gone full circle now with our advertising? The way that things are filmed, the way that filters are applied, the way that we now direct our ads. Do you feel that there's a different feel again for a different generation?
I feel like, I think I saw this somewhere, like the more, I mean, we're coming into this time where AI is going to get used a lot and everything like that.
Oh, he went there. Let's go there.
I went there. But even with that, I think like we're in this age where like everything is super polished, and like it's the same with digital cameras and film cameras. It's like we went through this phase of like, this is brand new and shiny, this is amazing, we can do this great. But now there's this whole resurgence into everyone shooting on analog and film cameras again. Like that's come back. I've recently got into watches. Even same thing with watches. Like it was all mechanical, hand-built watches, and then the quartz came in, and it was just this. The quartz crisis happened, but now everyone's gone back to actually they want their mechanical watches again. I think it's just a cycle. AI now coming in, everything being super polished. We're going to go back to just handcrafted ads, and I think it's good for at least advertising and production in general. Like, it's my preference. But
if you look at some of those ads that stand the test of time, you can see the fingerprints in them. You can see the humanity. You can in COG. You can see that it was done for real.
So we're all safe. AI is not coming.
Well, no,
for
AI will make everything look like it's been shot by Michael Mann, and everything will be slick. And I think humanity still has a role in that. I think seeing the fingerprints, seeing the sort of little looks, the little emotions, the little things that go wrong. I think, like Guinness surfers, you could do that in AI and it would lose all the soul of it.
All the feeling. Right?
All the feeling. You would lose all the
people
feeling.
Feel something, and so much AI output just makes you feel numb. Right? It's like, all right. And it's the feeling thing that sort of comes back. And you can use AI in ways that actually do make people feel some really powerful stuff. I remember when my kids were young, we'd get like a message from Santa, clearly done with like basic AI, and it was just somebody going to insert the name saying, oh, hi.
Because real Santa's busy.
Very much.
Right.
Busy time of year. And that actually was magical, because it was like, and it was very basic from a technical perspective, but it was still a smart use of the technology. So you can do that, but the watch out has got to be, what gets referred to as the slop, right? The Gen AI slop. Yeah. And I think we're all as an industry on the lookout for that, and if we're not, we should be, because it serves nobody to be doing that.
And I think it's because everything's in context, right? And I think it's important to remember these ads are all incredible. There are a lot of other ads in those ad breaks that were less good. And actually, a lot of the content was rubbish as well. Like, I remember watching TV in the 80s when those ads were sitting in there. They were genuinely better than a lot of the programming. Now,
I think you're watching the wrong telly.
Was I?
Oh, yeah.
Well, no, what, Howard's Way? No.
Okay. No, that was
each reference.
Yeah.
But, and now I think we're in a really interesting place where obviously the overall quality of the content's gone up a lot. And so like their ads need to come up. But now with AI, are we going to go into another phase now where there's just so much kind of slop out there? And it's a great opportunity for the communication to stand out even more, and maybe it's through the humanity or whatever it is. But like, I think that's what's really exciting. It's like another opportunity to raise the game.
And more positively, it does lower the barriers to entry as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you're a small business, suddenly you can create things that you might not be able to afford to create before, but you have to do it in a way that applies, you know, to everything we talked about today.
That's a really good point, because a lot of people are seriously intimidated by how much finance or how small their business might be. In order to put together an ad that's worthy of the brands that they're affiliated with. And you're saying that that's, you know, there's a leveler now.
I'm optimistic that might be the case, because at the moment those same small businesses are finding money to spend on Meta and what have you, because it feels like the barrier to entry is lower. I genuinely think for building a brand, for connecting with customers, there are better alternatives than that. And if you can reduce the barriers to entry, then that's a very positive thing to do.
That's brilliant. We've got a lot of people who have been sending in their questions, so let's have a little look at what's come through. A lot of people talk about the so-called golden age of advertising. There are some modern ads in the report too. Lücy, would you say there is a really great era over another?
Oh, I mean, I'm going to be biased because, I mean, what got me into advertising was, I guess, the golden era. Like, I used to just love the craft that went into creating those ads, which I feel, I don't know, there's kind of like lost this way, but is, again, I think coming back, and, you know, there's a resurgence in it. Yeah,
Could we be going into the new era as we hit the next 70 years?
Hopefully. That's definitely what I would want to bring forward.
Oh, I've got a great question here, not completely altruistic. This is to all the panel. When it comes to TV advertising, how important is a famous face to the success of an ad? I'm guessing my mum's written that one in. Interesting, because I've actually, from the other side of things, seen people with millions of followers and in certain spaces who then do not convert into the ad or the branding because it's not authentic. So that's been my own recognition of that scenario. But what would you say? Do you need famous faces? I'm nervous. Do you?
I think the boring answer is it depends, unfortunately, which makes for a rubbish panel. So I'd like to have a much firmer view than that and say, no, never do it. But unless there used to be a hearsay. But I think, I think it depends entirely on the brief and the target audience and what have you. So, but again, back to that point about repetition. Once you have it, repeating it is actually really, really helpful. And the best examples, like EE and Kevin Bacon, or Sainsbury's and Jamie Oliver, are the ones that have had that longevity. Sorry.
And Asia would close down if all of the adverts being filmed there by Hollywood actors wasn't happening. You're about to say something controversial. I don't know if I like it, Lücy.
Well, no, it's just, I think if your ad needs a famous person, it's not a good idea.
Interesting.
I think there are some, very few, that enhances the idea, like it's just a great pairing.
Yeah.
But I think in a whole, I think if the ad can't work without them,
come on, that ad with George Clooney when the woman wakes
up
and she finds out she's married
I think something
him.
like that is like one of the ones that is acceptable. But I think too many people rely on, you know, the famous person to save the ad, to make the ad.
That's a different thing, though.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a different thing. I whenever I've used a celebrity in an ad, I really like sort of messing around with them in terms of like going against what they're famous for, or trying to use them in a completely different way, or trying to find a way of, if they're famous for being sort of really good looking and sort of posy, do it in a really, try and do it in a different way, maybe put somebody else with them that undercuts that and
which taps into the humour that David mentioned.
And you get that authenticity, and you get those little laughs, and you get those little moments.
I agree. I think it's, but I think the root comes from like the idea leading it. Yeah, leading it as opposed to, because
the idea isn't
the idea. Yeah.
Yeah, too much pressure is put on one person just to bring their follower count to the product, and then when it doesn't convert, no surprises there. You're right. David, there's a question here for you. Do you believe that we risk audience alienation if we implement AI within advertising without a disclaimer?
Good question. Potentially. I think it depends on how well it's done, but I think it comes back to trust, right? Rick's talks about it, and actually TV has it, and so I think you'd lose it at your peril. It's a really valuable thing. So it depends on what it is. If it's a playful thing where it's very obviously AI, then I think you can get away with that. If it's an efficiency and production thing and it's not essential to the idea, I think that's fine. But the point Rick was making earlier, to fake something that only works if it's human is a big sort of red flag. So it's a watch out for all of us as we go forward. But ultimately,
we are watching.
But ultimately, it's the human aspect you've just got to think about throughout the whole thing.
Thank you, David. Richard, a question for you. A lot of these ads come with healthy production budgets. We touched on that. For those that don't have the luxury of loads of money, Richard, what can they do?
Be interesting and have a great idea. I think some of the pieces of work that I've been involved in that I'm most proud of have had no budget. And we've not no budget, like minimal budget, and you find a way. I think creativity is not just about spending money in a creativity is about being given you parameters and being creative within those parameters. That's where the best stuff happens. So client, like people being afraid of, I can't afford a £3 million. That's all right, as long as you're willing to sort of bend the rules and find different ways to do it, then that's great.
If anything, it makes you more creative.
It makes you more creative because you have to find a creative solution out of this problem, and I love that.
And Kit, a question here, lastly, quickly for you. Do you think, in general, ads of today are as iconic as the ones that went before?
It's impossible to say, right? Because when we're looking at the ones that went before, we're looking at them through the lens of nostalgia and shared and collective memory and all of our experiences. So I mean, it's interesting because when you said, do you think there's an iconic era? I was thinking I would probably end up saying the 90s because it was such a formative decade for me personally, and I felt, but it's not, that's just very personal. So, I mean, I'm really optimistic. I think there's absolutely fantastic work being made today, we're going to see those icons of the next 70 years coming out every week.
We look forward to it, and that's
we
all.
Just need the new creators to come.
Well, he's on it already. He's on it already.
Yeah.
Honestly, thank you so much. What an incredibly interesting panel. Thank you, David, Kit, Richard, and Lücy, and of course to Orlando and James for their presentation as well. Incredible research. And of course to you, thank you for joining us, thank you for watching. This was just a snapshot of the insights, but we do hope that we have provided plenty of inspiration for you just to whet your appetites to find out a little bit more. You will be able to read and download the full Living Room Legends report on ITV Media, or you can share it with your colleagues, which we encourage you to do. And you can download the report by scanning the QR code as well that will appear on your screen. We'll also be uploading the on-demand version of this summit to you at your leisure. Now, if you are interested in what this can do for your own business, please do reach out to ITV Media at itv.com, or you can speak to your ITV representative directly. There's just loads more for you to see. And okay, one more time, thank you so much for joining us. It's been truly insightful, and as you all summarised, for the creatives, trust the process. From me, Myleene Klass, thank you so much. We'll see you soon.